So welcome to the morning session for all you early birds. Apparently Vegas took a little toll on our crowd this morning from yesterday. So not unexpected though. Thank you for coming this morning. This is the Automated Buildings Educational Session. And this is our first session this morning. We're going to start with just a quick recap from yesterday. And we're going to move quickly into our conversation for this morning. Put my coffee somewhere. And so yesterday we had a great day. With us, we have our co-hosts are still here. We got Ken up there, Ken Sinclair from Automated Buildings, Brad White from SES Consulting, and myself, Scott Cochrane from Cochrane Supply. And so yesterday we had a really fun day. This room was packed like almost the whole day. I couldn't believe the audience. When Ken and I originally planned this, we were worried about people even being here, right? But obviously we can all tell that this event, a lot of people are here. It's going great, and with that, we had a great first day. We certainly had some interesting topics. We had, obviously we started with kind of like a roundtable with all of us, and we moved it into our panels. I would say some of my highlights from yesterday. I thought that I liked Anto's with the stack, the smart stack, and some of the things they were working on. I thought that was amazing. I also learned a lot in Mark Mqtt's session. God love him. He's such a great thinker, and it brought a lot to the table. Ken, how about you? What would you say? What were your highlights of yesterday? I know you got to sit through most of it.
Yeah, it was great. I too was blown away by the crowd, especially under the conditions, and see everyone out, and the quality of speakers and the quality of discussion has definitely increased in the automated building camp. Thank you very much for rejuvenating and bringing all of that new content, and with it, the people following it. Questions were great. I learned an awful lot. Watched a lot of the sessions, with intent, and it was. I really enjoyed the day. How about you, Brad?
About the same, I would say. Likewise, I caught some of the other sessions in addition to my own, and I really liked what Mark and John Petsy had to say about data. Our open controls session was, I say, controversial is not quite the right word. It was a spirited discussion, I'll say, which is kind of what it's always been, and which is great because I think seems to be a topic that evokes many different passions and opinions. So I'm glad that we were able to provide space to have that discussion, and I think we were able to kind of move that topic forward and sort of leave everyone with at least a slightly clearer picture of the way forward on open control systems.
Brad, I missed that session, unfortunately, but I'm just curious. Did you guys talk about cybersecurity in there too?
It came up. I wouldn't say we didn't discuss it at length, but it was definitely raised as a I don't know. Barrier may be too strong a word, but as something to keep in mind as we're moving towards open controls, and that it's one of those things that could derail the best intentions around openness, and if you don't have that piece nailed, it's really you're gonna come back to bite you. Yeah,
for sure. That was my thought on that.
But lots of people, I think good. It's not a deal breaker for openness. It's just something we got to be aware of, and it wasn't like it was seen as a showstopper. Just don't forget about this piece, and we got to make sure. I think there's additional pressure to do it well on projects that are being touted as open.
How'd my buddy Brian Turner do?
Oh, Brian was great. He was the session wouldn't have run as smoothly as it did without his able skills around moderation.
Awesome.
He did a great job of piecing all the pieces together. It was actually kind of amazing too that the four presenters went in such completely different directions. I'm not talking about hardware. I'm talking about philosophy.
Well, they were all
it was a challenge to pull it all together.
Ken, they were all in sync on the planning call. What happened?
They were saving it all.
Brian pulled together the threads that were common, though. I think we did a good job kind of pulling that together.
Great. Well, good. So we had some great conversations yesterday. A lot of good info got out. And so today we got another full day. So we're excited about today. Our first session this morning, we're going to talk to some MSIs, systems integrators. We're going to learn about their business this morning is really what we're diving into first. Followed by that, we're moving over to Welcome to the Jungle, which is a building systems integration 101, which is for introduction to those of you who are looking to learn more about how systems integration is done, who does it, how do they do it, who are the players, and we have some experts up here to help you with that. And then we're moving to, after that, we're going to, oh no, I'm sorry. After this session at 11, hold on, 9 to 10:30, okay, yeah, at 11, after this session will be, this one's a really good one. This is retrofitting for net zero, decarbonization, electrification, and the role of the smart building. And honestly, Brad and Craig are two of the most, I would say the most progressive thinkers in this arena. And they have an awesome panel, and that's going to be an awesome session. Because I think we're all looking at decarbonization type projects these days, and they're growing. So exciting stuff there. And then we're doing the Welcome to the Jungle, the systems integrator training. And then after lunch, we'll be moving to Smart Women, Smarter Buildings, where we have a panel hosted by Therese Sullivan from Tritium of women in the industry and what their roles are and their impacts. Another really good segment. And then Mark Peacock's coming back, and Mark has got a really neat panel as well. And his session is called Insights, Trends, Perspectives, an open conversation with industry influencers. And he's got Howard Berger from Realcomm coming, Paul Maximuk, and some other, I would say, very influential people in the industry to look at some of the trends. And then if, they got it listed for BAS technology trends, but we didn't actually plan that out. So that's just called happy hour for us. So if anybody's still here, we're buying happy. We tried to get rid of that session, but the show here, they were so busy, they never updated the website. So they left it on there. So like I said, we're just going to bribe the girls outside. We're going to have alcohol in here. That'll be the last session. So. All right. So here we go. So thank you all for being here. So our first topic this morning, we're talking about MSI best practices, platform wars, and data dynasties. And I have some theories on what's happened over the last couple of years with integrators. And my theory is that when I came into the industry a long time ago, the really complicated projects, the really hard projects were done by branches, not independent contractors. Because the branches had the wherewithal, the backing, the technology, they had what they needed to do the projects. But what's happened in the last, say, 10 years, 15 years, is it's no longer the branches that do all of the complicated large projects. Now we have another class of contractor. These are independent contractors, right? They're not associated with necessarily a brand. They're pure contractors, and they now have become the primary player in the large scale integrations, in the more complicated work. And as we're seeing today, they're the ones pretty much being considered for most of the major projects that we run into. And it's been a dramatic change. People say, well, why are these companies so able to meet these requirements and do these things where big companies can't? Well, and I believe that's because of technology. As more technology has been used in our industry, the independent companies could choose what they wanted. They could ramp themselves up as they saw fit, and implement whatever they wanted within the field, where the larger companies were stuck within the silos of software that they had built and lived on for the last 30 years. And as they were stuck in the mud, the independent integrators just soared, and their capabilities soared with them. They developed their own platforms to sit on top of other platforms, mostly based on customer feedback, right? They just listen to their customers. Customers say they want this. They develop that software. They put it on their buildings. Customers happy. It's not rocket science, right? But again, they now are the dominant player in the industry. And so with that too, you know, we've moved from this contract element of really a contractor, a BAS contractor, you know, in terms of that, to this new evolution of a contractor where they're really becoming this platform provider, where they're bringing all the final pieces of the smart building together for the owner based on the owner's needs. And with that, they're successful. Simple concept. They listen to the customer, and then they build the software the customer wants in their buildings, and then they help service it. And so their businesses are exploding. And I can't keep up with the guys we have on our panel, as they're always so busy because they're always being invited to look at more work out there. And so it's an exciting time in the industry, as I would say, from an opportunistic standpoint. Contractors who have decided that they want to really embellish technology and work with their owners to develop these customized solutions, they're winning. They're winning over and over and over. And the old box solutions that were limited, that came with overhead, that, you know, may have been backed by a big company, they're not winning anymore. They're not winning. And so what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to introduce my panelists. I'll give you a little introduction, and then we're going to dive into their businesses and try and get some good nooks and crannies of what they're doing and how they're so successful. So thank you, my panelists, for joining me. I guess I'll introduce you in order. Chris, my first panelist, I won't say it, but the young man that sold a lot of controls. All right, no, I'm kidding. No. Chris Colbago with Robusys. I've worked with Chris for quite a while. And Chris, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Robusys?
Yeah. Okay, so as Scott said, I'm Chris with Robusys. We are, I don't know, 1,150 person company. We've got 14 offices around 3 continents. And we started our business in '89, focused strictly around process control. And in the last, I don't know, dozen or so years, we've really taken a shift from just process control and automation and industrial controls into the commercial building space and, you know, the large industrial campuses as well. So what's unique about our business is we don't offer a single software package, kind of like some of the people here on the panel with me do. But what we do is we use commercial off-the-shelf products. We started our building automation group specifically in the Division 23 space. Now it's slowly shifting to the Division 25 space. Commercial off-the-shelf parts for a holistic building approach, as opposed to just going after, you know, 2309 specs with building automation. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, how we started and where we're at. Most of the projects we're working on now are large building campuses, typically multi-building or traditionally sophisticated owners that care about the data-first approach, as opposed to just what can my controls show me on a screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. All right, our next panelist, Ettrit Demai. Ettrit's with Code Labs. He's the founder, president, and Code Labs is based out of Detroit, and they're on a, like their old company, Rocket Fiber, they're on a rocket ship of their own, eh, Ettrit?
Thanks. Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Ettrit Demai. I'm one of the co-founders of Code Labs. We started Code Labs for one of those most simple reasons why we started at the beginning was to make it more simple and easy to actually deploy smart buildings, where you start to cut the time of the deployment from, you know, tagging and templating, referencing, and all that stuff. As we started doing that, as we kind of figured that out, we got really deep into the data engineering part, as well as started noticing that to really have a smart building platform or a software that caters to, you know, the masses, you need to start thinking about you know, what the consultants, what everybody else is bringing through. And then as these different use cases started to come along, you know, we have over 30 different integrations now, from, you know, single sign-on to IoT, IoT integrations to work order integrations to, their ERP systems. And then what we noticed as we kept going and going was that we were getting so much data coming in that we really needed to figure out an even better way to deploy faster, and then also deploy at the enterprise level. So not just deploy building by building, but be able to turn on 45 buildings at a time, whether it's a simple integration because it's a pain point, or more complicated integrations, and then being able to actually do that in a short period of time. And how we go to business right now is we do some direct. We've started moving much more towards our channel partnership lines. We're doing business in about 6 different countries today, and we have some really great clients and great channel partners who really understand system integrations. And then they just needed more software for the MSI process, as well as for the operating side, and then something that they could be more sticky with their clients. Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you, Edred, awesome. So our next panelist is not a contractor. This is the secret of where all the contractors came from. He's the godfather of all of them. Why? Because he's the guy who sold them all tritium. Niagara. He's guilty as charged. So even though he works for a big company, actually, he's been setting up all these independents selling them Niagara, because as we know, a lot of these projects have Niagara in it. But no, one of my good friends and colleagues in the industry worked with for over 20 years, Ed Merwin from Tritium. Ed, welcome to the panel.
Well, thank you. I, done business with everybody up here and most people in the room. So Ed Merwin, Director of Strategic Business with Tritium. And our role is to provide tools and software to keep up with this industry, because it's growing like crazy. And it's there's a lot of new things that we have to keep up with because the technology is changing. So we're very happy to be part of that and to work with over 5,000 system integrators that we have around the world today. So it's an important business, and we'll talk about more later about it's amazing how it's spreading out to more and more functions within the building and the campus to be able to do that. So thanks for having me, Scott.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, Ed. Okay, and our last panelist, Alex Weibel with Building Logics, based out of Dayton, Ohio. Again, somebody I've worked with for many years. He likes to give me grief, so ignore all his comments about me. He loves me, really. But Alex, take it away.
Thanks for all the nice comments about me, Scott. My name's Alex Weibel. Our business is Weibel Energy Systems, and I'm the president of one of our subsidiaries called Building Logics. We started as an independent train franchise over 30 years ago. Most of you would, I see some gray hairs in the room, and my comment would be the train franchise organization really was the entrepreneurial engine of this business for a long time. And as those independent franchises started to leave, luckily the vacuum was filled by people like Ed, and helping create the opportunity for control, service, integration to continue was something that we latched onto. We've been a systems integrator for over 20 years. Most of our work is domestic, Midwest, but we have done work in probably 40 of the 50 states here. We've done some international work. We also created our own platform for building analytics, really based off of driving service opportunities. And what we've realized today is we're really a manpower force multiplier. So one of the biggest challenges our industry has is we don't have enough young people coming into it, whether it's from a technician standpoint, a programmer standpoint. So utilizing technology, A, to drive people into our industry and showing them that technology exists, and then B, helping to keep some of the legacy technicians and talent that we have to get 3 or 5 or 7 more years out of them and make them productive. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. So we work with both contractors and end users, and what we really are trying to drive is how can you make a building more efficient without a huge capital cost, really piggybacking off of some of the original concepts that Tritium and Niagara came out with when they started developing their framework.
Awesome, thank you. So, cool. So I just want to make sure that you guys got all the pre-questions I sent you to prepare, right? Right? All right, great. Well, I'm glad you did. So they should all be ready for my questions. So, all right, so. Who'd like to go first? Alex, you got the mic. So, all right. So I guess, so we get a lot of questions from different contractors about the types of businesses you guys are. In other words, tell us a little bit, Alex, not about necessarily all of Weibel, but just Building Logics. Could you tell me about the team at Building Logics? And I ask you that in terms of what type of people are on your team and what type of roles do they have on your team?
Sure. On my team, we have really 4 or 5 different types of people. Mechanical engineers. So we're based in Dayton, Ohio. I was talking to Brett earlier. He's a UD grad. University of Dayton has a great graduate degree for renewable energy. And the guy that runs that program has really been a good catalyst for us to develop people and recognize technologies. So we have, over the last 18 years, we've had 5 or 6, graduates from that program come into our business. A couple of them have left and gone back home. So a couple of them are international students. We've got a couple of Niagara programmers. We have a couple of software engineers. And then we have a few distribution people. So, like Scott, we're in the distribution business as well. But a big part of our work really is from an energy perspective, once data is organized and collected inside of a facility or campus of buildings. And then, as I said before, trying to help identify big rocks and areas of opportunity, because so many of the people that are trying to manage or run or control buildings are being pulled in 1,000 different directions. I mean, whether it's a K through 12 school or a hospital or a university campus, they're chasing smoke so often they don't even know where fires are. So giving them, not only areas where those things are existing, because the data is not easily acquired, accepted, and digested, but giving them that heads up and identification of where real opportunities exist, and then also connecting those pieces to what they're trying to drive, whether that's sustainability, energy management, or operations, or any number of other things.
Awesome, thanks. Alex, how long have you had software developers on your staff? How long?
Really since Building Logic started, so 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
You guys have been developing additional software on top of what you buy.
Right.
Based on owners and
Right.
contracting needs too. You guys built a lot of you took a lot of what you guys did in service from a contracting perspective, correct?
Right.
And you moved it into a software platform.
Right.
Through the developers, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the first part of it really was what you just said. I mean, we had technicians in our world in the service business 25 years ago. 95% of our contracts were in the chiller room. That's what Trane sold. That's what we sold. That's what we took care of. What we wanted to do was try and expand out into the VAV and air handler, really the entire building. But the challenge was time. I mean, if you're truly going to check every VAV box, there's not enough time in the world to do it. So what we were trying to identify really was, okay, when a technician goes, what do they look at? What do they do? And then that question just continued to be applied to rooftops and air handlers and fan coils and chiller plants, and identifying the rules, the information, both from a technical standpoint, I'll call it from an academic or book, and then also from a practical standpoint of sitting down with the technicians and getting feedback from them and saying, okay, here are the things that are important, and writing a set of rules to quite honestly be able to help get those answers faster and more efficiently. And, utilizing a process, and that's a big part of what I'm sure everybody up here does. I mean, Chris and I have talked over the years, Scott and I have talked over the years, everything comes down to a process. And if you can apply a process, then efficiencies come, time savings, energy savings, money savings, all flow from that.
Yep, cool. It's been really fun watching their business develop over the years as they've stayed focused on this for years. And really, it's because it's given them positive customer results. I mean, at the end of the day, the customers have seen a huge value in the results of the software and the service work that they were doing, right? And I think it's been fun to watch. So, okay, I'm going to skip you, Ed, because
No problem.
and we're going to move over to Ettrit. So Ettrit, tell us, dude, your company's kind of cool. So could you kind of start with tell us about overseas development a little, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So when we started the company, we started with really making sure that we had people that understood buildings altogether, people that had a lot of experience in how buildings work, how buildings flow. And then from there, we really went after software engineers that had a lot of experience in different industries, not our industry, just because we think that if we bring the same people that understand buildings and the same people that understand industries within our software space, we just thought that maybe we're going to do a lot of the same things, and we wanted to try something different. That's really what it came down to. And then so we have code stands for Kosovo Detroit. We started in October of 2017. We really started developing in mid 2018. We did a lot of Q&A. We did a lot of system integrations for one of our clients because we wanted to have our software developers understand the process and how manual it can be sometimes. And then from there, we scaled to data scientists, data engineers, and then different types of mobile app developers. And we stopped developing on iOS and Android. We went Flutter. We were one of the first Flutter testers for Google. And then we started creating a pretty good relationship with Google. They started seeing that we can pull data pretty fast. And they started noticing an opportunity, not even Sabine's team, it was a different team. And then they funded us to continue building on Google Cloud. So what we started doing is, as we saw data coming in, we brought in more data scientists, data engineers, as well as now we've brought in a good amount of cybersecurity, as well as we've matched team members from Kosovo and from Detroit. So here in Detroit, we hire a good amount of University of Michigan students. We have a good relationship with them. And then in Kosovo, we hire, in Eastern Europe, it's a huge tech hub, and it's very hard to recruit software developers, as you guys all know. And then us being refugees from Kosovo, it really helped bridge that gap and scale even faster. And then what's good about, what we enjoy about the team and everything what we do is that our team members from here spend time in Kosovo. When they go to Kosovo, they get a different type of culture. So they get this culture of when they're coming in, everybody shakes your hand and says, "How was your night?" And then after work, no matter how late you work, kind of have a beer. It's like a different culture. And then here, when they come here, yeah, it is. And then when they come here, what they understand is the level of professionalism of what US, Canada, and everybody else, and then the follow-ups, and then the customer service, which is a huge deal. So bridging, mixing those two profiles has helped us really, not even from a software side, but really make sure we deliver the best service all the time, every time, because that's really important for us.
Yeah, I got to say, you guys have done a fantastic job of ramping up a team that can just, your platform evolves so quick now. It's so impressive how quickly you guys add features to it and things. And I guess, you don't have to answer this, but just give the industry, the group a flavor of how many software engineers you guys staff, and just an idea of how many you're working with today.
I think 80% of our team is software engineers right now. And then the other 20%, we're up to 90 people now. And we really want to make sure that, when I say software engineers, I put the profile of, even project managers, testers, data scientists, data engineers, and then cybersecurity. Because even on cybersecurity side, we have to take it really seriously now. And we started implementing CIS controls process within our platform. So our channel partners, when they are, acting as system integrators or MSIs, if they want to use our MyMSI tool, they're not only going to have a process of actually understanding, how MSI should flow, but also possibly getting more into, having checklists. So if they are meeting with or having a workshop with Rovisys, for example, and then from a Rovisys perspective, understanding what type of systems they're bringing in, and then the level of security based on CIS controls. So that stays with the client after too. Sorry, I'll stop.
So yeah, Ed, you better tell Tritium to look out because that trip's kicking out software faster than Tritium now. So.
No, we utilize Tritium for everything.
Right. No, I'm just joking. But no, awesome. Thank you. All right, Mr. Colbago, Chris Colbago, Rovisis. So they were, the systems integrator, the industry, for any of you who didn't realize it did not start in the BAS industry by no means. The real big systems integrators that I knew of growing up in this industry, they were in the industrial process side. Being that I grew up in Detroit and did business there, they were some of the first integrators I ever met. And they were big companies back in like the 60s and 70s, and they were doing big, large scale systems integration of plant floor equipment. And so a fascinating story is one of these giants, one of these super successful industrial systems integrators, they literally woke up one day and somebody presented a business plan to them. I think Mr. Derek Dreyer, maybe somebody else. And they said, let's do BAS. And that was when?
So that was 2012, 11, technically.
2011.
We were technically, our building group started in January 2012. And just like all things Rovisis, we got into the industry completely on accident. So 2009, mortgage crisis, everything kind of plummeted domestically. So what Rovisis does is mitigates risk. We ended up taking a massive, I don't even remember the dollar value, project in Singapore. We had a 30-person team fly to Singapore and do what was then our first MSI project. Every system was under our control, including, a couple $100 million of subcontractors. The riskiest thing we've ever done. We'd never managed a subcontractor before, especially in Singapore. We'd never, just keep it there. We'd never done building automation. But what's interesting about building automation, if anybody here has ever done process control, it's exactly the same. You're just controlling different pieces of equipment. And I guess to kind of piggyback off the last question, what's different about Rovisis, we don't hire industry leaders. We hire traditionally college graduates, and we teach them the Rovisis process. So our Rovisis process comes from our founding days of the 80s. It hasn't changed. It's not application dependent. It's 100% the same. All college grads teach them the Rovisis way. And what's unique about us, for every project that we do, we don't have a field team. So every project that we have a engineering team that deploys everything for the project, and then they travel to the facility, whether it's in our backyard or across the world, and deploy it on their own. So that's kind of how we got started. That's our stumbling into building automation was completely on accident. And across that, we literally had no idea how HVAC worked. We hire 100% degreed engineers. For anybody who's an engineer, we don't learn a lot about HVAC in college, unless you took a very specific HVAC engineering class, which I did not. Most of us did not. So we got a project with a very large data center company. We got about 20 of them all at the same time and had to learn HVAC in about 6 weeks, which was not easy.
They're smart guys though.
Well, it helps, right? That's definitely a factor, but we put in some time. I can't even take credit for a lot of that. I was still in school, but when I came on board, it was still pretty hectic. So yeah, we've learned HVAC after the fact, which is, it's been successful, but probably not the way I'd recommend it.
And Chris, on the current team today on the BAS side, do you guys have pure software people, right? Could you speak to that a little bit?
So the way our whole company is broken up, we have 50% process control folks that are traditionally focused on every industry or every vertical market, all process control. Say that's 500, 600 people. We have 200 full-time dedicated building automation engineers, so people like me. And that's across Cleveland, Ohio, Raleigh, North Carolina, and our newest building technologies office in Atlanta domestically, as well as Amsterdam. We also have across the enterprise about 200 software engineers or software folks that really connect the dots between either process and building or building and data. So we don't develop like a Code Labs product or a Building Logics product, but we use basically commercial off-the-shelf things that exist already just to kind of create something custom for our end users.
And forgive me, typically you follow whatever the customer tells you to use for software, that's what you put in.
Yeah, true. We do have some, some larger softwares that we prefer just based on experience and training. But yeah, if the customer says we want to do this in OSI Pi, if Stevenson's out there somewhere, yeah, OSI Pi, I mean, we'll do that. We're a big partner of theirs, you know, anything from Tritium up to a large scale process control piece of software. We really try to connect those dots.
Cool. Awesome. And in terms of like, I know you guys have grown a lot. How big is that, like the BAS team today?
We're about 200 people across 4 offices now.
Yeah. Huge. So cool. All right. Thank you. So Ed, back to you. So you walk around, you talk to all these companies all the time. So can you tell us about some of the, I would say some of the similarities in the successful MSIs, in terms of the types of people that are involved in them? What makes a successful MSI, Ed, from the inside out? Tell us.
That's a tough one because everybody's done it a little bit different, had a different journey. But I think the first thing is they had the willingness, it's listening to the customer. I'll start first because I'm a value person, right? So forget all the technology and all that. The first thing is got to have a great relationship. But they're just a bidder. They're just going to bid a job. That's not what an MSI does. Although nowadays we're actually seeing specs for MSIs and that sort of thing. I think the people but Alex brought it up, the relationship that Weibel has had with their customer base and Ettrick with his and Rovis with it, that's the big differentiator. They want to work with that customer and that customer wants to work with them because you can't just bid this stuff out, right? I'd love to hear what everybody's saying, how much is negotiated, how much is really bid and those sort of things. And a lot of it's a proposal. But I think first of all, they've got to have a really good solid organization. They got to have passion for the business and know their niche, right? Because I'm sure all of us have been on projects where we didn't make a lot of money, right? So, and we learned a lot. And the question is, do we learn a lot and move on? The other thing is the willingness to add talent. I love the idea that you bring in college people and mentor them. Some people have to do that. Paul Oswald, our good friend, they ended up having to do a lot of that, train them themselves, right? And then you hope you have some old gray-haired old folks like myself. They kind of lend their business, right? All our analytics and all our AI and ML is up here, right? And that's what we have to do is kind of transfer that. So I think it's a combination of things. I think a lot of them deploy differently. I love the fact that you have your engineers that do the job. They deploy because guess what? They have to make it work. And that was the old school days when I worked at Honeywell. The engineer did everything. The engineer did the job. They project management. They went to the job, and it was a sort of pride. And Brent's shaking his head here. You had a personal pride when you left that hospital job, that job. It was you were personally at stake. And I think that's the other successful part, that you own the customer, you respect the customer. So I'd say that's some of the traits. The newer traits that everybody's coming up with, you're hiring engineers that understand software, but you have to now understand software, cyber security, and certificates, right? James Johnson spends more time talking about certificates than anybody in the world. And that's a new realm that we have to look at. The federal government is going to push it, the GSA, the DOD. So I think it's this willingness to bring on people and take that responsibility and understand I have to do a holistic job and own that. And it's a tough job. It's a much tougher job now, I think what we're finding is. But if people have built the base with good people and the people have stayed, those are the successful companies.
Agreed.
It's an HR, it's more of a management style that makes technical as well, don't get me wrong, but you also have to have a really good management style and understand employees and HR and can create a great team. And that's why I'd love to hear your synergy of the team at Coastal going back and forth. So I think, and I've known Alex's people personally, and again, it all comes down to chemistry. I think these MSI companies have just a great chemistry in their team and a great amount of pride.
Agreed. And I think you pointed out one of the keys that I believe is the key to like their teams is, and it's funny, and I think Scott, Greg, Kim they will all appreciate this with me, is they know like we'll meet a new contractor, somebody who wants to start into an integration, and I'll be like, I like that company. And it's like, why? And it's a pure thing. It's passion. It's passion. You can talk to the people that want to do this, and you can see it in their eyes right away that they truly want to do it, and nothing's going to stop them. And frankly, there is nothing stopping you. There's clearly not enough integrators out there today for the work that's out there. So if you keep looking, you're going to find work as long as you have the passion, I believe. And I know all three of these guys have it big time. So.
And you're willing to lose money on the first few jobs. I mean, let's be honest.
as you guys know, I've traveled around the country quite a bit doing business in different cities, and I've met a lot of BAS contractors that try to get in the market by lowballing a bunch of jobs so that they can get their name in front of the mechanicals, get a couple of service opportunities. Now that was losing money, okay? That was hardcore, like start your business off -$1 million and work for the rest of your life to not make it a -$1 million. I don't think it's as much risk as that. I really believe it's more a matter of personal risk and really putting yourself out there in maybe not a comfortable place for once, right? In the business world. Maybe like Chris said, he's like, well, it was in Singapore and we never done anything like it, and it was the most risky thing, but hey, we just decided, and that's what makes greatness in this business is it is taking those risks like that. And they're calculated too, by the way.
And this is not a contracting business. This is truly a service business, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what the one mindset you have to go. You're not just going to go in there and leave. It's a long term. And that's frankly what makes it more financially better off in the long run by having it being more looking at it as a service business versus just a pure contract.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, but my point on willing to lose money, I mean, if you've never done the work before and you think you're going to go out and do a high level MSI job and it's going to be treated like a project, you're going to lose your ass, and you've got to figure out what Ed just said real fast, which is it is not short term. I mean, we've taken a lot of jobs at low margin, knowing that we have a service business. We're taking a project that's going to be converted into a service because part of the process, and I use that word a lot because it is a process, is the client has to see that they can't manage the complexity of their building on their own. And if you show them that you have their best interests in mind, they want you to be there to assist them in managing the complexity of the building. That's what the service is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Alex, you bring up a great point, and to my next line of questioning, which is so I also get a lot of questions from people that want to get into systems integration, and they're like, who do I call on? Who's my customer? Like, who buys this stuff, right? Like, I get those questions all the time, and it's a complicated answer. So I'm going to ask the panel, and let's start over with Etrit in the middle. Etrit, tell me who are your customers? And also, I don't want to know like the customer names as much as the types of businesses, but more importantly, the people within the business that you're working with. What are their roles, responsibilities? Who are those people that you call on to generate new business for yourself?
Yeah, that's not, so I think just to piggyback off what you said, I think the industry is completely changing, as we know, but changing much faster. And the reason why it's changing is because there's so much competition, which is great. We need to have more competition. But with a lot of competition and a new level of, consultants there, as well as, the portfolios, government, new regulations in place. Most portfolio owners, whether they're smaller or larger, have somebody within the team and now they have big teams, that is either at the VP level of smart buildings or VP level of operations and sustainability or something like that. I think what we do is we try to attack that and really make them understand that what they're doing today is probably wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because they're literally negotiating and they're letting every one of their local engineers negotiate what system should go in those buildings, what type of process should go there. So like they have a process for their work order system. They have a process for everything else. They have no process when it comes to smart buildings, and they can't create smart buildings that way. So when we start to make them understand, at times we have to, we even introduce them to consultants who may even go out for an RFP, and we may have to bid it because we feel pretty comfortable about what we can do. And then from there, once we get our first pilot, so like when clients say, hey, let's do a pilot, we say, instead of whatever budget you have for that pilot, rather than us kind of trying to guess it or whatever else, just give it to us for 3 buildings. Because we feel very comfortable that if they give us 3 buildings, if they're existing, we know that they're going to be a little bit complicated depending on who the controls contractors there, or system integrator, or however you want to call them. Once we get into those buildings, we take a lot of time and understand basically how these engineers' days is going, what drives them, what takes a lot of time. So like if they have a fire notification and that fire notification takes them 2 hours or 35 minutes to actually get to, it's a problem. And then that's not set up the way it needs to be set up. Some, if they have it all set up on we prefer Niagara, and I'm not saying it just because Ed is here, because I think that a lot of other BMS systems say they have APIs, but they don't have APIs, and we see it all the time. But there's some other really good ones too, like, many different ones. And then from there, what we do is we really make sure that engineers are bought in. Then if the pilot goes good, we've had 0 churn to date with this process. So no clients have left us. Shouldn't say that. Well, we haven't had any churn. And then from there, it's an easier process to tell the VP level, like team members that, hey, what you just picked, when they make a pick up here, right? And then let's say, I don't care if it's 10,000 or 100,000 or millions, because they're going to do a deployment all over their buildings. If they get it wrong, it's a lot of time wasted and a lot of negative reaction from the engineers. So if they trust in us, we take it very seriously to send that trust back, but we do it through software. And then everything that we bring in those buildings, the optimized start stop, to occupancy reporting all the way to the CEO level, to different things. We just want to make sure we connect everybody and we give the credit where the credit is due. And then from a service contractor perspective, we do bring these controls contractors on board. We're not competing with them by any means. And then going forward, rather than doing Niagara graphics, because we do like Niagara, but rather than doing Niagara graphics or anything else, it's very light graphics because we all know in our industry, we can say it, there's probably something to do a good job with graphics, but most, if you're doing a tenant improvement, a retrofit, a new construction, or just whatever you're doing, those graphics packages, whether they're, IntelliWeb, anything else, they're just not good. They're not 21st century graphics package. You need mobile apps, because mobile apps, what we noticed is that engineers use mobile apps 80% of the time, and 20% of the time they use web. They're on Facebook. They're going to be on their app. If they need to get to something, they need to be able to get to that cut sheet. They need to be able to get the things they need to be able to get to. But in order to do this at the enterprise level, there's a lot of, you have to have a certain data structure in place, and I won't get too much into that, but that's kind of what's helping us go further. And then with these service contractors, we bring them aboard. We make them channel partners. And then rather than them losing out on service contracting dollars, we do help them become more transparent because they want to be more transparent. It's not like they don't. They just don't have the ability to do it today. And then they use our tools, and then they continue to go and at times help us scale to other buildings. And then they become part of, Code's channel partner program and everything else. And then they help us continue to keep scaling. And that's what's helping us keep going. And then we've never had one, service contractor that has looked at us as a, competitor. I think also because we do really want to make sure that we bring them aside and we tell them, hey, we're not just going to do this. We're going to tie this with Active Directory. We're going to tie all these other integrations, and it's going to be at the enterprise level, and then they feel good. And then like Bedrock, for example, we're going to start running a pilot project here where Bedrock is set up, specifications are there, everything is there. And it's not just because of code, it's because other people and their team members are really good at what they do. What we're doing is rather than code, coming in when all the data comes in at the Niagara level, we're certifying 3, controls contractors that they already like to work with. And then they're going to bring that data all the way to the finish line and we're just going to test it. So we're removing, at the same time, we're moving sales away from revenue away from our company, but it's helping us really grow faster and show that, these controls contractors can do this probably 10 times better than we can because they just understand the building and they understand how that everything flows.
Okay, Edred, so everywhere I go now, whether it be a manufacturer, another contractor, end user, you're getting to all of them.
Yeah.
So what's your sales philosophy, Edred? Because, you're making an impact and you've made it quickly. And And, I'm just curious, like, what's your sales philosophy? I mean, what's your thoughts there and how you go to market? Because I know what you're doing, Ed. So what's your thoughts there?
So making an impact, I'm not really sure yet. I think we have such a long way to go, but I appreciate it. What we're doing is really trying to be as transparent as we can, but then at the manufacturer level, like manufacturers have for so long have, changed the model of how they do things. Manufacturers can't talk to the VPs, to the CEOs, because chances are that in a bunch of buildings that they're in, if they take like a rating scale, they're probably going to be, maybe they're probably not going to be doing as good of a job, or they're going to have a lot more negative impact. Manufacturers, I think the way we approach them is we just approach them at, hey, how can first we be more open with you? How can you be more open with us? And then every manufacturer that we know so far that we've spoken with, they're trying to figure out this new thing, right? And then everybody wants to get to, everyone in this probably room, if they're in the industry, should probably think about getting to more SaaS, so software as a service. And manufacturers are thinking that way already. And the only way to pitch them that is by telling them that you have, we have a software that kind of plays at the top level and shows a process that at the procurement side, you're not just adding fees, but you're removing, fees or things from different scopes that already are not that good anyways. And then you're using that budget, or probably even a little smaller budget, to go further. And then from a data perspective, we just show them, we can easily show them how their equipment is running, because we run digital commissioning, we show them all these things. And I think every manufacturer, needs to start moving to a place where they are a holistic platform and not just a platform for just their own products, right? So that's how it's working. And then from a channel partner perspective, it's very easy. Depending on who we're in front of, they get demos from companies like ours all the time, like, analytics companies or command and control. We do command and control as well. And then that's a different approach, but I would say it's very easy and it's just transparent. So if we do something, we really pride ourselves to doing it all the way to the finish line, even if we lose money all the time, it's okay.
And you start with the C-level, right?
Yeah.
You always, it seems like to me, you start with the highest level person that's decision-making and then work your way from there.
I think the C-level, C-level real estate portfolio owners or even corporations, they know that buildings are so complicated, but if you can show them a picture really fast and break it down in a nice way, that their buildings don't have to be so complicated. These manufacturers are, I'm not going to say it this way, but we know they're spending too much money on things that they don't need to spend too much money on, and they need to get that data to be able to go back and negotiate at a national level. We did it with Johnson Controls in Canada. Didn't work out as well.
Are you telling me you're doing the shiny thing? Hey, look.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely.
It works with the C-level, right? The shiny things work with the C-level,
Yeah.
folks, just saying, because they don't have a lot of time to take in a lot of data. So
I would say
a pretty picture can go a long ways, right, Etrit?
I would say data works at the C-level.
Yeah. Cool.
Data is a big deal. And then I think you can't get to the C-level until you approve it till the engineer on the building says, I like this product, and the C-level says, I want to actually talk to these people.
Does the C-level buy 3D graphics at air handlers?
No.
No.
They want data. They want to save money.
Yes, they want aggregated,
Yes.
summed up data that they can look at, make good decisions from at their level.
Yes.
So yes.
And even at the channel partnership level, we show them the level of risk when if they were to take on the certifications at this, at the beginning or after, or we take on the risk until they start making money and then take their hours in. And then it's really, all the risk is on us because we feel pretty comfortable with what we're doing.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, Chris Colbago. So RoboSys. So I'm almost like, I don't want to say I know you guys because you're on every RFP for an MSI on earth, literally.
Yeah.
So how did RoboSys get to that position in sales to where you guys, it seems like you guys are considered for every large project that I've ever heard of. Could you speak to that from a sales perspective?
Yeah, so I don't know, first of all, which is great, but that means our team's doing a great job, right? So it's not me, that's also great. I would say two things to answer your question. One, and everyone's gonna say the same thing, but all customer first attitude, right? The first projects we ever did with our biggest customer ever, lost a bunch of money. But we didn't walk off the job. We took care of the customer. We got more work. And we stumbled through probably 3 years of not terrific work. And then we went back and fixed it on our own dime. So that's probably the first thing, is just the customer first attitude, making sure that, your customers don't ever leave you, as long as you don't leave them, ideally. The other thing I'll say is, I think last year, 94% of our business was all repeat business. So that's also terrific. But the other thing, and for the last dozen or so years, by doing good work, we've met a lot of people. We've met a lot of general contractors and engineers, architects, and our industry is very, I don't think incestual is the right word, but like people leave companies and go to different companies every 3 weeks. So if we do work with one guy or one woman at one company, that person's leaving and going somewhere else, and they're like, oh yeah, Robusys could do this. So I'd say that 6% that's not repeat is typically just word of mouth, or people who transfer from company to company, especially with big tech. I think some of our customers we've done work with them on big data center jobs. They go to a big life sciences manufacturer, and now we're doing work for both. Also, word of mouth with general contractors is really big. General contractors build big buildings really fast. And when we do work with them, typically it goes well, and they always, think about us for the next one. It's been rare that I've been in meetings recently where people are like, we don't want Robusys on the next project, just because of that customer first mindset.
So Chris, obviously outstanding performance will always get you work, but I was witness to you guys. You guys came to me because you wanted to do some work for a large industrial end user in Detroit. You knew I had a knowledge base on it. You guys basically came to me and you said, we're going to start selling to them, and we need to know what you know. Now it's like, well, I can tell you what I'm allowed to tell you, and you guys were more than happy to, take that information, and next thing I know, you get the job. So how do you guys do that? I mean, that was a targeted customer that you guys were doing back-end research on, and you did, could you speak to that process a little about how you guys do that?
Yeah, so that was a very niche opportunity. We knew a terrific person, or I think you introduced us to a terrific person, and they have been frustrated with their last integrator. We just happened to make the phone call on the right day. We ended up doing some pilot work, and 3 months later, we're getting RFPs for 500,000 square foot buildings. That's literally the answer. But it starts with starting small. I think every project or every large customer we've got, with the exception of a select few, it's always been, well, let's start with this pilot job, or let's start with this smaller project, or let's start with this JACE integration or supervisor replacement, and then see, can you do that? Okay, well, we want to do these 16 other things. Oh, there's an RFP for a brand new facility. That's pretty much it. It's just that repeatability and customer focus.
And I think what all three of you guys have done very well is network. And I think that at the end of the day is one of the keys to sales in this. Would you guys all agree, is expanding, being open to every relationship?
Yes.
Because as an integrator, you never know how that relationship might come into play with your accounts. Would you guys say that's accurate?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Ed, anything to add on the sales of the MSI, how they go to market and who they call on?
Well, first of all, you got to sit down and listen. I'm going old school on you now.
Right.
Value, but I'm serious about listening, right? And understanding what the real nuances are. And it's different. The C-suite's totally different. I was glad to hear that, because in the C-suite, it's what's really is driving business right now. And I was just on a call right before this on sustainability. I mean, there is a new, used to be was energy managers, and their role has really come up. And now there's a vice president of sustainability for 1,000 buildings, and they're worried about EV charging and all that sort of thing. So now as a system integrator, not only do you have to worry about whether the dampers are working right, you have to worry about if the EV charge is working right, and what are you going to do on the water usage and things of that, and the solar. And now they're putting battery packs in buildings. So I think what we all have to do is listen really well what's changing in the industry really fast. And then the other thing I want to point out is all you talked about is a lot of partnerships going on. You can't do the job yourself, like you talked about. You can bring in a service contractor as part of a team. You can bring in a manufacturer as part of a team. We know some of the big jobs that we've worked around the world with our buddy Brian, that he's had to bring in multiple contractors because they couldn't do all the work, but they had to orchestrate the work. So as you talk about the process, you have to have this team of collaborators that's in there. And that's something I think Ken's been talking about for years is collaboration, right? Just collaboration in the industry and that sort of thing. So I do believe that collaboration is key to that. And I know all three of you have done very well at that and being willing to pull teams together to make stuff happen. So, including your services that you've been a key, supplier and understanding technology and bringing those new ideas to all of us, right?
Well, I think one of the biggest services we've done is to introduce all these guys to each other. Because as you mentioned, Ed, and I've noticed it too, as integrators get to know each other, they kind of morph themselves into the capabilities of others, knowing that now they have a friend that can do that type of thing. And they carry that into the next projects, into the next end user relationships, and grow their businesses based on these partnerships and relationships. And I think all three of these guys have worked together in some form, as with a lot of the other integrators that we work with. So
I think how Scott's company helps is very simple. Even when there's turnover, not everybody comes and asks how code is. They go and ask the people that they're buying from and everybody else. And I think Cochrane does a really good job at doing the right thing, but also protecting their system integrators and everybody else.
We work hard to give you guys as much as we can in terms of providing you services and collaboration and stuff. And we're going to continue to do that. So cool. So a little bit about the sales process. So let's dive into a little bit about deliverables, okay? And in terms of deliverables, I know platform, no platforms, things of that nature, but what are owners really looking for from you guys when it comes to these platforms? And when I'm talking about what are they looking for, what I'm asking about is non-traditional. Like, where is integration taking us for you guys with, and I know it's owner led, so tell us about what these owners are asking of and what you guys are seeing out there. I guess, Chris, I'll give you the kickoff here for this one.
Sure. It's ultimately dependent on what customer we're talking to. I know that's a really nonchalant answer, and I'm going to completely disregard your question, I think, by answering it. But our customers ask for different things, and it's all market specific. So, in mission critical data centers, they don't care about what it costs. They want the servers not to blow up. Cost isn't an option, so they're not worried about low price. Commercial buildings, sometimes it's low price, low bid. We got a budget, we got to market this, or we have to finance it or whatever. Automotive, kind of the same thing, depending on who you're talking to. So what are they asking for? At the end of the day, it's a turnkey delivered project with access to open data. That's literally it, in an easy to use platform.
And depending on the application, they connect whatever they need. It's application dependent on what they integrate to.
That's right. So 100%.
They think.
Yeah, they don't know.
I mean, sometimes they don't know.
That's actually sometimes the best thing is that they don't know.
Right.
That could be really helpful and also really scary. But if someone doesn't know and they've been approached by XYZ company, they might think, what you offer isn't as good as that because you can't show it to me, or you can't, I saw this. You don't have this. You don't need that,
Right.
Right. That happens all the time. So, but someone who doesn't know, could be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys do a ton of data center work as well.
That's right.
And within the data center space, is that an integrated space, would you say, or is it still pretty disparate? How do you feel about that?
It is super integrated, and it's only become that in the last 5 or 6 years. When we first started doing data centers, we were the BMS contractor. That's all we did. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've become everything from building management system, lighting control, fire and life safety, server control, data center integration management, and electrical power monitoring all into one platform. Just because we were there and said, yeah, we should be able to handle that. Big risk, but that's really what sprung us into the MSI role.
And that's really the kind of like the normal job today for you in a data center. That's the scope usually.
100%, yeah. And we're sole source for a lot of that stuff now, which is terrific.
Which is really interesting that the market has moved to that, to where the acceptance of an integrated system is becoming the norm more so than the oddity in the data center space. I agree 100%.
It helps that the data center companies are big tech and they're future forward. They're big on edge devices and everything having an IP address, and they can also manage that IP, which we don't have to get into. But they understand networking, and they usually also want to own the building when it's done, which is another big difference from data centers versus other customers of ours. They hire 20, 30 people to run one data center, and they have 14, 15 data centers on one campus.
They're fairly new.
That's right. Yeah. And they're all, last 10 years for sure. That's the other thing, someone who owns the building, is invested in the building and wants to learn about what you put in is a huge factor, as opposed to having to show somebody, all right, here's a screen. It's different than the last 14 screens you got. Here's how you change the set point on this VAV. And, it's completely disparate systems.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right, Etrit. So same question to you, except, I was witness to a couple of your customers talking about you. I was sitting there listening to them talk about Etrit. Your customers, Etrit. You weren't there. It was very interesting. No, I'm kidding.
I can imagine.
The one customer said to another customer, he said, well, unfortunately, Code Labs has started developing new features that we don't have time to do right now. And they were upset. They were like, dang it, we can't put these new features in. They piloted it somewhere. They were upset that you piloted a new feature without them. They were
That's good to know.
They were upset about that. So just so you know, you're in trouble. But Andrew, tell us about I'm just giving you the,
I'm gonna make a call right after that.
That's right. But anyways, so tell us about the evolution of your platform and in terms of how you guys have used it to meet the customer needs and some of the changes you've made to it to do that.
Yeah, so the first thing was really simple, normalize all buildings. And I guess it's a simple ask, but very tough. And it's taken a while because I think, again, who's in front of you is a big deal, right? So like, if we're doing an RFP, let's say with a partner, there's a consultant that's usually saying, you need to do X, Y, and Z. There's 35 integrations, and then no one knows what type of integrations they are. So it's very hard to put the right price together. And then from a new construction perspective, it's the way it's evolved is that we noticed that in order to have a true smart building platform, we needed to not just build for when things are live, we needed to build for when things are happening. So whether a retrofit is starting or a new construction is starting or a tenant improvement, to be able to catch that data, Chris was talking about IP addresses, a bunch of other things. And then to be able to know, because one of the big things is there's a proposal out there that says I'm going to put in, it's very confusing because most proposals can be very confusing. They can either be 2 pages or 90 pages. And then you really don't know how to understand what is the final picture. So what we do is we just break it down based on drawings, based on how many different systems are coming in, how many devices, how many pieces of equipment, what type of equipment, what type of edge devices. And then we start to basically do a digital shop drawing as we are gathering information. And then based on a digital shop drawing, we start to understand, and the client and the consultant, everybody else, they understand what's actually happening, what they're supposed to be getting. And then from there, we just track it. And then that's kind of what, that piece, developing a process for MSIs and not just talking about, I'm going to do this and then the next project, I'm going to do something completely different because it's another human being. It's very hard to scale that. And it's also very hard for the client to follow that, right? So I think that part has been extremely useful for us. And then how it's evolved, going forward has been that different clients do want different things, but they really want the same outcome. So whether they're an engineer or vice president or a CEO, they want the same outcome. And most of them, unless you have a Craig on your team and you're really going deep on energy management, that gets lost sometimes. So we develop different modules and features that make it easier to just track your schedules, like machine learning for optimized start-stop. We've tried to change that model. When we started it, a good amount of our clients didn't care for that too much. They were scared actually because they said, I'm not gonna say the name. I had another energy management provider that's raised a lot of money, and they said every time they did this, they had no idea what was happening within the system. So I had so many tenant complaints that it made life really hard, and then they didn't want that. So what we did was we said, let's pick a tenant, and then we picked a tenant, and then we started to, so what we noticed is we really need to make sure that how we get these different clients on board is staying along with them. Even though we are a software as a service company, we're really driven towards making sure that what we're putting in place is actually making sense. And then from building analytics perspective, I think there's so many really great building analytics platforms, like SkySpark is John Petsy is, I always tell him, he's one of the best, smartest guys out there. But I think now they're looking more for metrics. So like, and they're not looking for, like, SkySpark does a really good job because it ties with everything and it's one of the best. But if they're looking for rule-based, it's, you're going to end up putting 150 rules by the time that building is making changes and everything else. And those rules become more of a pain and like alarms than anything else. We just try to make sure we understand a little bit different, and we try to go by metrics based, because we have owners that have occupancy sensors. They have 3 different types of occupancy sensors, all bringing in the same data the same way, so they're not using those front ends. Smart bathroom sensors tied with BMS, tied with fire panels, tied with everything else. And then some are read only and some are read and write, depending on what it is. So that's a different type of optimization and metric that you can have based on if it's just, let's say, base building systems. Those are different metrics, and it's very hard, even for us. We're still getting better and better at this because they throw some case at us and we're like, man, so how we're evolving is really, we are hiring data engineers anywhere we can get them that just understand data and engineering and really mathematics, because it's a very tough thing to do when you have all those type of data points coming in. We do work with Google Digital Buildings Ontology, but if we would have just implemented Google Digital Buildings Ontology within our platform, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, Google knows that. We had to add referencing, we had to add a lot more definitions and continue to evolve that for it to actually be something that is easier to deploy, not harder, because, that's just, it's like, we can say that we have the Google Digital Buildings Ontology, but then one of our channel partners says, I have no idea what's going on here. And that was a big turning point for us. And we started going further and further and further, because we said our data scientists know what's going on, but these guys don't know what's going on. There's a problem. So we have to keep adding, and we're continuously adding, because it's very hard to track billions and billions of data points a month and to make sure that it's actually useful data. And then also to track, to send the right events notifications that a sensor is down to the engineer, but then a toilet paper sensor is under 10% to like the property management team and everybody else. And then to the VP and then regional and national levels, here's how digital commissioning is working. Here's how all your systems are working. Just a little grading score based on what they want to have. And we've noticed sometimes we do a bad job with that too, because we just, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And we're very comfortable about saying the things that we're still working out and making them better and better. And I think that's what our clients really like. And that's why we keep evolving, because we just tell them, hey, we just messed that up. We're going to change it. It's going to be fine. We're sorry about it. But that's just kind of how it's.
Yeah, and it seems like in the integration world, you guys are finding the problems for the end users where there are those gaps. You develop the solution. You fill the void. And, we've seen a lot of that. So Alex, can you tell us a little bit about, from your angle, and the expectations in terms of your customers and your delivered services and how that looks?
Sure. Listening to Ettrick, in my mind, a lot of that comes down to what I was talking about earlier, is it's manpower. You have to get to action, whether you're integrating a building or whether you're doing building analytics. If you can't get the process to the last piece, which is taking action on the data, you wasted a lot of money and time and energy and effort. The toilet paper thing is kind of interesting because that seems pretty mundane, but if I go take a crap and I can't wipe my butt, that sucks, right? At the same time too, the lighting piece, I wouldn't give 2 shits about. I'm more concerned about the central plant running than the light in the bathroom being on. But our people are being tasked with going to take care of the light switch as opposed to a central plant that's driving energy cost and inefficiency and more maintenance cost and more capital planning. Showing them the downstream. Our business deals a lot with healthcare and higher education. Those buildings are not cookie cutter. They're not young. A typical hospital in a major metropolitan market is going to have a core that's anywhere from 60 to 100 years old, and it's going to have 3 new projects coming out of the ground and everything in between. And they're going to have pneumatics, they're going to have 5 different BAS systems. They're going to have 6 other building, systems, whether it's elevators or lighting or med gas or whatever. And a big part of what we try and do is help, again, where do you really have big problems? I mean, what's the driver that you're trying to get to? And again, in our experience, that's really the challenge. And then connecting the challenge that we know that they have to the drivers that are going to give them a budget that's going to allow them to solve some, if not all, of the problems that they have. We were with the university the other day, and the director of facilities shared with us, he's like, the only question I get asked today is how can you show me that the buildings are healthy? Because if our students aren't here, we can't collect tuition because the parents aren't going to pay, or the government's not going to pay us if the students aren't coming back. And they're sick and tired of being in, a remote learning session because they're getting pressure. Now, if you're Princeton or Harvard or Stanford, that's not a big problem. But if you're a small state school or a private university with an endowment under $100 million, that's a big problem. So how can the facility manager share or show, hey, this is what we're doing for healthy buildings? And raise your hand if 10 years ago you talked to anybody about healthy buildings and they listened to you for more than 2 seconds. Because I know they didn't, because we did it too. But walk through an equipment room today and you see more UV lights. I ran into a guy I've known for 30 years on the show floor yesterday selling dynamic air cleaners. And it used to all be around energy. And it was all smoke and mirror, and there was no mirror. But today he's selling so many of those things because he can show data that proves that they're cleaning the air and they're providing better ventilation because of the product that they can put in. And it doesn't matter what it costs anymore. So that's a different concept than we've ever been into inside of this industry. Chris mentioned it earlier. Personally, we've always, early on in our integration, especially on the MSI side, a lot of it was plan and spec. Until you developed a relationship with the hospital or with the school or with the university, you were buying or taking a risk on the job financially. And today I would say that's a little different. Today, like you, it's based on reputation. You've done the work, we call on engineers and GCs as much as we do end users and contractors because we want to get to the C-suite, but it's hard to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm with Weibel Energy Systems or Building Logics. I'd like to talk to your COO. Oh, let me get him on the phone for you. We are trying to leverage partners, whether that's an engineering firm because they typically call on a higher level than what, our service company would. We try and leverage existing partners and success stories that we've had because they all have peers. And, Scott and Ed know this, our capabilities really grew inside of the K through 12 market. And in the state of Ohio, there's a lot of decision makers because we have a ton of school districts and you only had to do a good job, you always had to do a good job. But when you did a good job on the first 1 or 2, it was very easy to leverage those and hear from Troy City Schools, hey, those guys did a good job. I understand you're having a hard time managing your brand new school that's 450,000 square feet. You got a ton of money from the state to build it, but oh, by the way, you got zero money more to run it.
Yeah. And
now you're running at a deficit and, your energy costs are out of sight. And that was the driver 20 years ago, but now we want to keep the kids at school. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is the starting point for you and for us was pick a vertical market that you got connections in, you got knowledge of, and that you can start, developing a relationship and cutting your teeth on. And from there, utilize that vertical market as a way to either springboard into the next or expand as far as you can inside of it.
That's great advice, Al, I think, and it was recorded, so. Good thing, so you don't have to repeat it. We got it.
Should I say it one more time?
No, we'll put it in the
Because
bottle.
I know you're not listening.
We're gonna put it in the bottle and send it to you. No. That was awesome comment. Good advice for up and coming MSI. So Ed, I used to call you once a week and I'd say, hey Ed, you ever hear of an integration to this? And you'd be like, yeah, maybe, you know, and then you call me and be like, hey, you ever heard an integration to that? And I'd be like, I don't know, maybe. Like, and after what, 20 years of doing that, I think we've integrated everything, right, Ed? I mean, is everything?
That's how your dad used to sell. I loved it when he said, oh yeah, we can do that.
Oh,
We never
yeah.
argued. Your dad, he didn't worry about details, right? He said, yes, absolutely, we
Yeah,
can.
no. So what's the world like today, Ed, in integration?
Well, today, it's ingesting data, right? So there's new, data centers, SNMP. Who did SNMP 10 years ago? Nobody did, right?
Right.
That's the data, the language of data centers, right? So we're not all, and now people aren't as proprietary as they are, but they are using things that we're not used to, REST APIs. Just on a project with a lighting company that they used to do some BACnet, but they did part BACnet, and the rest you had to go to the cloud with the REST API to get that. Well, that's not something you come up against, right? So that became a little bit more complex. So we're seeing a lot of that. So I think, and then we're seeing what's called MQTT, right? Which is, I tell people that's the BACnet of the cloud, right? That's how you push data up to the cloud in JSON packets, but it's still got to be customized. It's not, nothing's been defined. And the biggest issue customers are telling us today, we are trying to provide those vehicles, southbound and northbound to push data around. That's what we're trying. But we also want to make sure that we support the ontologies you talked about, Google ontologies. Amazon's got a different perspective on it. John Petsy's got it, and Brian Frank have a different perspective on it. And but you're going to have to support multiple ontologies. So if somebody's a Haystack fan, you're going to do Haystack. If they're Brick, it's Brick, and whatever BACnet's going to come up with. And what I've been fortunate to be on some calls with some very large property owner and REITs, and what they're worried about is, I have all this stuff out there in all these buildings and I don't know what data is out there and I don't trust it because I've got all these different systems. So I need this data trust, and that's going to be the next thing, to make sure that we clean up the data that's there, right? Also make sure the building's working, like our good friend Paul Oswald said. First of all, is it hot or is it cold, right? You have to fix that. But can I trust the data? So trusted data brokers is an important concept right now, to go into a building, clean it up. And a lot of people out there are selling products that assume the data is already working and it's clean, and they're putting a gateway in the building, and it's like, what in the world is this junk on the wire?
Yeah.
So that's the next big step, is that we have to have clean data, and then we also have to push it up and down. So you are going to have to become better. Your techs that are used to finally getting to BACnet, and they already maybe knew LAN, right? In Ohio, we did LAN many years ago, and then it went to BACnet IP. Now BACnet SC is coming out, which is a whole new complex. But our customers and the big REITs are not talking that. They're talking the REST and the MQTT and getting data to cloud services, multiple cloud services. So that's where we all have to just keep learning and keep understanding, and hire people that understand. The good news is kids coming out of high school probably could code some of this stuff better than a lot of us can. So that's the easy part. The hard part is letting them understand what they put in that MQTT packet that's going to go to the cloud.
And Ed, it points out, like in the early days, we used to look for drivers for all these physical pieces of equipment in the building and figure out how to communicate to it all. And that's what we considered systems integration. And now what we've done, and what these guys work on as much as, if not more, is on what we consider enterprise integration, which is now we got the building control, we got it connected, we got the data, but now the company that resides within the building wants that data in a different format, or wants to connect it to their enterprise system in a certain way. And that enterprise level integration is something that's not talked about widely in our industry, but I think these guys would all admit it's a huge part of their success, is being able to meet the demands of those enterprise integrations as they go. And to Ed's point, that's a moving target, and it's a vast group of different languages now that we have to be able to integrate to.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
on the enterprise side, and I don't disagree. I mean, and I think Chris probably has a different perspective because of who he works with. But going back to what we said earlier, we have clients asking us for that, and we will typically ask them, what do you want to use it for? I mean, why do you really want that? And they come up with some big long answer that they're reading off from whatever, C-level guy or gal, shared with them. You're like, okay, I'll tell you what if we show you a process before we start doing an integration? Because the cost to do it versus what you think you're going to actually get in terms of value from it, there's a big separation between that. Now, that may not exist in the data center world, but I know it exists in the healthcare world. It certainly exists inside of the K through 12 world, because there's not people that can do anything with that data.
I remember offering authentication integration for an integrator in a meeting, and he says, "Oh my God, you just wrecked this job."
Way to go, Scott.
When you open up an Active Directory of 250,000 users and try to integrate it, that could add some complexity to your system.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
I owe you for that one. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, thank you. Okay, guys, so this has been an awesome panel, and honestly, we could go all day, frankly. This has been great. I mean, I had like 10 more questions I didn't even get to. So unfortunately, we have 5 minutes left. So before we end this, I'd like to open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions from the audience. Greg?
I know we've been touching on cybersecurity for the last couple of days. Every one of these panels have talked about it in some detail, right? And I know, Ed, you kind of mentioned how the GSA and the DoD are starting to get real serious about cybersecurity. You guys work with enterprise customers for the most part, but I'm sure you have some other customers who may want to build an 11-story office building, right? So how are you addressing cybersecurity? And do you guys have cybersecurity policies that you push on to the owner? Because I know an enterprise customer is going to have a large IT department, right? They're going to have their own policies. But what about the typical customer who may be building an office building? How do you address it?
I'm going to start. Cybersecurity by default, right? It used to be you had to set up the cybersecurity. Now, in our products at least, a lot of it's defaulted. You have to use strong passwords. You have to do that because they don't know what they don't know in many cases. So it's got to be built into the products. Now, what worries me is when I go out on the floor and these sensors go straight to the cloud. I wonder what kind of cybersecurity is built into that device, right? So, but the point is,
I was thinking that too.
I think some districts can be very sophisticated. Some school districts have somebody that's just trying to keep the PCs going for all the teachers, right? Because everybody's remote. So I do believe that it's got to be, and it's a risk involved. I'm sure all of us know that if something were to happen and somebody would, regardless of what the reason is, that this is a huge liability there. So you have to start by default and you have to build it in. The DoD has a complete spec on cybersecurity now, and what you have to do and the certifications that have to have. So I think everybody understands it now, but I still think there's this huge amount of vulnerability out there, and I'll let everybody else come in.
Well, I'll just say something real quick. I mean, Ed said it and I'll echo it. Tritium's got great documentation.
Right.
I mean, we're obviously, well, we're not obvious, but we're a Vicon reseller. We're a big component of Niagara. We don't sell anything else. Our comment when we deal with customers is typically, okay, if you like what we're talking about, the next conversation needs to include your IT people. And here's our stance. We're following your policies. We're not telling you what we're going to do. You're going to tell us what your policies are. We're going to share the documentation from our manufacturing partner. If there are questions beyond that, we're going to get the right resources, whether ours or theirs. And maybe once in the last 4 years, we've had to get James on for, something that our team couldn't answer. But it's pretty rare because the documentation exists, the fact that it is secure by default, and the fact that you have best practices that you can share with them that say, okay, we can fall in and follow the policies that you have. I mean, that to me has been a successful pathway and has eliminated a lot of the roadblocks that we dealt with, early on, just talking about being on a network, whether it was a dedicated network or the business or building network. Sorry.
No, that's really good. I think, because I think you covered a lot of it, but just to kind of go back to cybersecurity, when we started doing cloud, we started building the cloud, people would tell us that's never going to work, it's not going to happen. It's pointless, it's too dangerous. So what we would do is we would walk around. I can literally have one of our cybersecurity engineers if that building is, let's say, BMS system, Niagara is really well documented. That one, Niagara's going further on cybersecurity. But if you put in, I'm not going to say names, but if you put in a system and you think that, if they wanted cybersecurity or their existing ones, how you can show them is pretty simple. Is most user IDs are general, most passwords are general within buildings. Everything is. So I think you can tap into on-prem solutions much easier than even tapping into cloud solutions at the same time. I think it's extremely dangerous how most, providers out there leave that open, and they're going to have to work on that. And what's happening now is there's CIS controls in place. New York is putting that in place. Canada's probably going to put that in place as well. So all we can do is make sure that our partners and ourselves understand the process and understand what's there, whether they ask for it or not. It should be part of the actual project, and we should be able to at least have that documentation of what CIS control has, not tell them per CIS controls or anything else. It should just be an easy process, copy and paste every time, but we do not take liability into cybersecurity, that information. If they want to go further with it, there's many other cybersecurity, softwares out there that can manage that for them. And then all we do as MSIs or system integrators, anything else, we just make sure that we're accountable. We can hold our manufacturers accountable. It says, hey, I'm being asked all these things. Do you have it or not? I think that's kind of what's coming in place. And then if somebody doesn't know, it's.
So you guys aren't passing along actual written policies to your customers, right?
No.
Chris, anything to add?
No, on that point, I would avoid it. That's a really big risk. If you're going to do that, you better carry some significant cybersecurity insurance.
Actually, I'll retract that. If you are bringing in a platform or a service into the building, you should pass along your documentation and your cybersecurity process to them. And then if they do or don't approve it, that's a different. If they do or don't look at it, that's a different story. But everything should have, like Ed was saying, very clearly. You can go all the way down to the details of strong passwords, updating every 3 months, to pen testing, and to still being able to do these things because they're just process.
It's amazing how many, Greg, most bigger organizations, maybe not even school districts, but even hospital organizations are asking us to submit software to them, and they're running it through their pen test. We have our own pen testing, but I got a report today from a major software company who ran the test. And they said, okay. And there always finds little stuff. You just hope they don't find anything critical, right?
Yeah,
but like with the story with,
Then you walk into the equipment room and see the BCU and say, there's your risk right there.
So the point is, I think the end users are being very proactive, especially the larger companies and the national companies are extremely proactive today, and the demands are much higher. And that's why our cyber team was involved in back and forth with some of these elite testers and discussing it, because we're a little bit different. We're not a printer on the network, right? So
yeah.
But it's a good thing for the industry because it's going to force everybody to follow these practices, I think.
I'd say what's neat about all three of these companies is by default, their cybersecurity policies are there to protect the owners, and they all take pride in it. And, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of funding for cybersecurity as well. And so we've been thinking about developing a Niagara virus, maybe to kick up the funding. But
God, don't say that.
I hate when I say that, but we've been trying everything to get the funding, but nobody will pay for it. So, maybe a large disaster. I don't know. I'm kidding.
How many more disasters do we need?
Right. Exactly. Thank you, Bill. So anywho, well, unfortunately, we are out of time. So thank you, panelists. That was awesome.
Yes, thank you.